think being a generalist today is really, really powerful. What is needed is someone who understands a little bit about a lot of different stuff in a lot of companies. I think in 2021, like it's better to be a generalist than a specialist.
Hey everyone, you're gonna love this interview with Marshall Haas. We get into so much in this conversation, including some war stories about 6- and 7-figure e-commerce businesses that he has built. One of his most recent companies, which is on a rocket ship of growth, Support Shepherd, and how he has managed to do so much at such a young age. This dude is barely even 32. Stay with us. Marshall, it's nice to be talking with you, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Before we get into your whole story, any connection to the Haas racing team? I know that Formula One's coming down to Texas this weekend.
Yeah, I wish. I love motorsports. Yeah, no relation. Totally wish it was like, my dad or uncle or something, but no.
Damn, I mean, I don't know how common of a last name that is. You would know better than me, but I feel like you could pull some like extended cousin stuff, maybe try to get in there.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Hey, put me in, coach. I'll drive. Yeah.
So I want to start off with a pretty simple, maybe not simple question. How many companies have you started?
Ooh, it's hard to answer because there's so many projects, that in my head was going to be a company that, never saw. Looking back, I wouldn't call a company now. I don't know, man. If I had to guess, probably around 10, with only a few of those actually being viable. A lot of failures along the way and everything.
Gotcha. So when I look at your current holding company, NeedWant, I see a services provider, Shepherd, that we're going to talk about in a little bit. I see some things that start to kind of skew into real estate and these other. I guess I wouldn't even know if I would call a services business more scalable than a products business, but your origins are really in, creating physical products and selling them online. So can you talk to me specifically about what attracted you in that direction? Was it, someone you were proximate to, seeing them do it? What made starting in physical products the attractive route, when I feel like today, stuff like software is way more glamorized because it feels, you need a laptop and a education, basically.
Yeah. So early on when I was just getting started, it was like a fresh-faced entrepreneur, looking up to guys like Steve Jobs and Facebook and, all the software side. I was actually working in software. I had a software project management startup that totally crashed and burned. But during all of that, a couple of years of that, I got really interested in physical products. I just thought it'd be really cool to start something that you can touch and hold. Like I would, tell my family about what I'm doing in software, and they just don't get it. And it just seems so fun to have an idea for something and then physically be able to hold it. I think I started to feel like it would be easier to sell as well. There's so many free apps at the time. And I just thought that you're not fighting against people expecting, software to be free. Whereas if I hand you something this is my widget, it's physical, you're already assuming that of course there's a price tag to it. You're not fighting against that. You don't question, Starbucks, there's of course a price on this piece of coffee or this coffee. So it's kind of that. It was just frustrated with it's going to be hard to get around everyone assuming something's free with software. And I just started kind of jotting down various ideas and frustrations I had. And I felt as a little 1-person, 2-person company, you could totally make something, I saw that it was now possible to contact factories in China, and if this is now just possible. And so, why shouldn't I, make something? It's just if I boiled it down, it's just an interest, I was just super curious about how that worked and started tinkering around.
And in software, there's the kind of common trope of the MVP, the minimum viable product, and you write enough lines of code and it's functional enough
Yeah.
to get someone interested. Physical products a little bit different, especially, whether you're prototyping or you're going and doing like the smallest run that you possibly can from the manufacturer, seeing what gets delivered and seeing what needs to kind of be altered. So, given your experiences now, you've built a number of brands, a bed sheets company, iPhone case company, so on and so forth. Like what do you tell aspiring physical product entrepreneurs about kind of testing what it is that they want to build?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of hit the nail on the head. It's really hard to, with software, you can make it super ugly as long as it functions. You can slap a price on it, and iterate. Where like you kind of have to have branding, and the product needs to be pretty solid and good, and like you can't be issuing recalls day one. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of the pros and cons of software versus physical products, right? Like it's I don't know if a word of caution is the right way to put it, but I would tell people like, yeah, you want to test and get it right, so you don't have to go back and redo a manufacturing run, because that's super costly and can burn you. And I've gone through that. Yeah, there's just no way around it. There's no like, well, okay, let me back up. I think you can definitely test things out with small runs. So, okay, thinking about the final product you want to make, definitely needs to fall in what I was just saying. Like it needs to just be pretty solid and, as close to perfect as you can. However, early on, I would work with a manufacturer that will allow you to kind of just source something from them that's similar to something you want to make. Build a brand, do a super, super low production run, as low as you can, just to like, not burn a bunch of cash, test the idea, see if there's demand for the space you want to be in. And then I would look at like doing it, the final version that you originally had the idea for. The flip side is Kickstarter, which, I think most people are familiar with. Pitch, the final version that you want to do, and do a Kickstarter campaign for it. But I think today that's still probably the best way to go to get off the ground. But when you deliver on that campaign, like you need to have it solid and not, have it as the MVP product that, you have a lot of issues under the hood.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of Kickstarter campaigns get bogged down in that phenomena.
Yeah, and it finishes, and then actually executing, delivering side, yeah, for sure. That's where all the hard work is, I think.
Can you talk about one of the times where you did have that run and it didn't go well and you kind of had to, get back up off the mat?
Yeah, man, this is like a painful story. Yeah, so we had this company called Smart Bedding, and it was a bed sheet company. So we were going to sell, full set of sheets. So the top sheet, duvet cover, pillowcases, fitted sheet, all of it. And the idea was basically making your bed is pretty time consuming. We kind of boiled down what goes into making your bed. And in our opinion, if you slept with the top sheet, it stuck out of the sides. So you had to like tuck it in. You had to realign your duvet cover in the top sheet. And that was the gist of making your bed. And so, we weren't going to build like a mechanical bed that like pulls a sheet and makes it for you. The idea was, we'll just solve for those problems. So we had this snap system along the sides that kind of kept the top sheet and duvet cover together. And then we cut the top sheet to be about the same size as the duvet cover, so it doesn't stick out. So that was the idea, was to make your bed faster, make it, a lot simpler. Did a Kickstarter campaign. I think we raised a little over 50K in pre-orders. Awesome, great. Like this is, high fives. My co-founder, like people want this thing. We have a business here, and did a production run. Found a manufacturer, vetted them, got samples. They were tested a bunch of manufacturers. They were the best quality. All the above. Check the boxes as far as we were concerned. And it was just delay after delay after delay. Finally, they fulfilled about half of it, got our hands on the material, and it was nothing like what we originally approved. So it was kind of this bait and switch model. So we had one, like, I mean, at this point, I think it was like a year in. It was like, production run should take 30, 90 days, depending on what you're doing. And then, a week shipping it overseas to your warehouse here to like 30 days back then when we didn't have a global pandemic going on at sea freight. So like we were obviously blew way past anything reasonable there. And we were basically at the mercy of this factory. Like we had, that was all of the money that we raised was to, produce this thing. I don't think it was a scam, this factory. Like I think they were a real factory. We had someone, a separate kind of quality control person go out, and it was a real factory. I don't know to this day, like what happened, but they basically kind of fumbled and went away. And so never delivered anything else. They had the majority of our funds. We didn't have enough money to produce again with someone else. So while this is all going on, me and my buddy had started some other small e-commerce businesses as side projects that, we're super fortunate that we're making a bit of money. So we, it came to this time, it was always in limbo. It's like, are they going to deliver? Are we going to get what we ordered from these guys? They just kept dragging us on. And it, push comes to shove, you finally have to make a call of just, this is not going to happen, and we need to be honest with backers, hey, this is what's going on. And just like, apologize to people profusely and shut it down, or dig deep, take a loan, come up with money another way, and do another production run. So that's what we did. We approached a high net worth, wasn't even a friend, it was kind of like an acquaintance, about taking a loan for about half of what we needed, and then we put up the money for the other half with basically all the profits of the other thing we had going, and decided to make it better, higher quality. We went with linen this time around. It was going to be cotton the first time. And then anybody that wanted to hang on still at that point, we just delivered a more superior product, and the retail price that they paid was about what it cost us to do in the first. Actually, no, it cost more to do. So they got more than their money's worth, and that was kind of our thank you for hanging on. Relaunched with that new product, and that went on to do pretty well. But man, it was like I had panic attacks throughout like the year of this like arc of, it's your personal name on the line. I didn't want, I had every intention and good intentions to deliver on what I promised people, but you're at the mercy and like you're limited. You can only do so much, So yeah, that was one where we just had to further dig deep and take a risk and make it again, to keep people happy and see the thing through. So that's kind of the quick story of that one.
So in an instance like that, where you're delivering something superior to what people paid, and it's because of the weight, it's because of kind of the natural progression that you realized you wanted to take with the product, does an experience like that make you more of a believer in karma? Because all these kind of good things, at least from an external perspective, seem to have come your way professionally. And, you got a holding company with a whole bunch of different business successes before the age of 32. Does that make you more of a believer in karma, or what's your kind of like, I don't know if belief system is the right phrase necessarily, like what's your framework for thinking about something like that?
Yeah. I think, anybody who is going to scam people or even be just like a little loose with promises and stuff like that, like you're not going to be able to be in business for very long. Maybe you get by for so many years, but like it's going to catch up to you. So I mean, that stuff never works. Like, I'm just practical about it all. Like, yeah, I think you should do right by people, but someone that doesn't have a moral compass, I think you should just be wise and like, it's not going to work anyways. So yeah, totally a believer in doing right by people. But yeah, I mean, let's be real. Like, we're super glad we over delivered in the end to people. But there was also a good business reason for us to make the product better. We saw some flaws in some things, and we wanted to like make a better product. So of course it was like multiple points of motivation. Do right by people, over deliver, but also for future customers, like we thought this was going to be the better, more compelling product, anyways. So it goes hand in hand. Like, do right by people, and build good products. Like, it's just a winning combination. Like, the opposite of it, like, just, it doesn't work, right? Whether you have morals or not. But hopefully everyone does. Yeah.
Word. I want to circle back to some of the other product stuff later on, but you kind of made the shift now out of being primarily a product entrepreneur. And I've actually interfaced with, the reason I reached out is because I've had a great experience interfacing with one of your service provider companies, Shepherd, which assists people with the hiring of international talent explicitly from the Philippines, completely different price point for labor. So can you take us through the kind of origin story of a company like that? Because honestly, as a client of yours, it seems like I've almost like kind of uncovered a secret. Like, there's a little bit of like, this is really working.
Yeah.
And, I'm happy to share that obviously in a domain like this. But can you just talk about like the origins of this idea? Cause you probably had that same perception of, I've got this secret figured out however long in the past before you launch. I believe it's been around for like 17 months or something.
Yeah. Wow. Your stuff there. Okay, so those that don't know, we're talking about an agency called Shepherd that I started with a co-founder. We're basically a headhunter agency for outsourced talent. Right now, focus on the Philippines, but may expand to some other areas. So simple model, we just hire full-time hires for our clients. So if someone's looking for part-time, like, we don't do that. And then we don't mark up their time. If someone's paid $5 an hour, we're not billing it out for 10. It's the other way. It's you guys needed a video editor. We go out and try to find the best video editor we can for you, and present a bunch of good candidates. If you guys like one, or a client likes one and they're hired, we take a fee of the presumed first year salary, and then the relationship hands off to you guys, and that's now your contractor or employee. So the genesis of that one, I started with this guy named Jomer. He's based in the Philippines. He's Filipino. Awesome guy. He worked for me, or worked for me for like 3 or 4 years. Came on as just like a customer support agent, helping with a little bit of operation stuff at Peel. So just like a part of the team, super friendly. We got to know each other. We were basically chatting like every day. And my wife and I were traveling for a while, and I wanted to go to the Philippines and hang out with him and another employee of ours over there. So we finally get to like hang out. This is in 2019. And I think Jomer's always had the itch to start something. And he's talking about BPO companies, which are like business process. I'm forgetting the O. It's probably just business process outsourcing, but it's companies that go over there and hire staff in the Philippines, and most of them are run in what I touched on earlier, which is great. You need a customer support rep. It costs us $5. We're gonna give it to you for 15 an hour, and they just mark people's time up. There's a lot of that. And we just started riffing on ideas and ways you could build a company like that today, and kind of find your niche into that world. And we eventually kind of settled on the headhunter model. And we chose that model for a few different reasons. But Jomer and I partnered. He's the general manager, so he's kind of running the day-to-day, and He, has been the one leading the team. And it's been awesome, man. It's been a really fun business. It's hit a chord with a lot of entrepreneurs and it's been growing well.
How did you find Jomer and the other Filipino team member before Shepherd?
Yeah, that's actually kind of a long story. I'll try to give you the quick one. So we bought an e-commerce company probably in 2016. That is long story for another day. Eventually failed, like went to zero. It was a pretty painful experience. And the silver lining, at least for our side, was we got Jomer with the acquisition of that business. So he was doing support for that company that we hired. And when it kind of went bust and it wasn't working, we brought on several of the team members in Appeal instead. So yeah, without getting into the long story there of that big long failure, yeah, he was part of that team, and that's how we got to know him. And then the other team member, she's our bookkeeper, and I think she was doing bookkeeping contract for a friend, and we wanted to bring our bookkeeping stuff in house, and that's how we found her and brought her on full time. Gotcha. So that was yeah.
So in terms of scaling, where does this stand in the context of other businesses that you've done? Because I saw a tweet, I'm just going to back into it. It was at 15 months, you'd gone from 1 to 32 employees, and it's now been another 2 months. So I have to imagine that unless you've hit some road bumps, it's got to be even further beyond that.
Yeah, I think we're at like 40 something employees now, something like that. And that's the internal Shepherd team, that's going out and sourcing project managers, content person, all that. Yeah, it's been a wild ride. Like all the other stuff I've ever done, max has been like, 5 to 10 people. I think was at Peel's peak as far as headcount. I think we had 10 people. So it's been wild to like grow that fast as far as headcount, and there's always company culture things you got to run into, and people running different teams. Like previously for me, we ran a really flat organization, whereas now at that size, it's just kind of hard to do so. Yeah.
So in terms of that type of growth, usually that comes with some form of financing challenges. Given your background in physical products, I have to imagine that you're more comfortable with debt financing than the average entrepreneur, because that's usually a part of like the big inventory runs to some degree or another.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we can get into that. So we designed the business a few different ways to help solve for kind of the issue that you're touching on, which is just cash flow, and bootstrapping. So one of the things that we've done from the start is, so our model, we only get paid when we close a project. So like you could come hire us and it's basically risk-free until we deliver a hire. And people only pay when they actually hire someone from us. So easier to sell, a lot less upfront. However, the one thing we ask for is a deposit of $500 from clients, which basically just shows us they're serious and not just like tire kickers, right? So that helps with working capital for the business. That's been really good. And then it's been good to just know that that client's serious. The other thing was making it a headhunter model where the relationship, once we find someone that the client likes, we hand them over, and the relationship is now between that hire and our client, and we get paid and we move on to the next client. That gives us more cash flow. We're probably leaving money on the table long term, doing some sort of subscription model, marking up someone's hours. There's other companies that do that, but we did it this way so we could bootstrap, get paid basically percentage of that presumed salary upfront once we hire for someone, instead of getting a much smaller amount monthly, but recurring indefinitely. So yeah, those two were definitely by design, because I wanted to bootstrap this thing. So we haven't needed to take any loans or anything like that, or even put funds on a credit card for this one. It's been totally bootstrap. positive cash flow, all that from day one.
So it sounds super optimistic, but you were talking about like the culture and team building challenges of just something with so many team members. Like where do
Yeah.
you fall? Because you have real estate holdings, you've had all these product companies, you have background software. This is classic client services. So that also,
Right. Right.
comes with headaches. How do you just, in terms of feeling like what draws your energy versus what's sucking your energy in the context of those four different business types?
Yeah. So very recently, I've been able to start putting general managers in place at these companies, whereas the model before, need want, when we were doing only e-commerce, at one time we had big four e-commerce businesses active, and like it was the same core team, running them all, and we'd like do a sprint on this one, and then do a sprint on another one, and then this one's been neglected, for 6 months when you get back to it, or worse. Whereas now, some of these have grown enough where there's enough cash flow and profits to actually motivate someone as a general manager, where, day to day, buck stops with them, and it's on them to run the day to day. With Shepherd, it's uncharted territory for me, right? Like, previously, the biggest we ever were at Peel was 10. So it's just it's new problems, we have to navigate. Whereas, if we were doing another e-commerce business, I know what to expect at different stages and cash flow issues and all of that. So it's been fun. It's a new challenge. It's like I work with Jomer, like I said, he's GM. So day to day, he's on things, but we of course are talking a few times a week, about should we hire more staff? What are the levers that you use to look at to hire more people? But it's just like at that level, you want to keep your employees happy. You want to make sure we're being efficient. We're not getting slower with delivering our services as we grow. Like, how do you do that? Do we break out smaller teams? Like all of these questions that we're having to navigate. And then, just culture, like, team retreats and, having a fun thing for everyone to do on Fridays, like that kind of stuff with a smaller team just happened organically. You'd like, hey, you guys want to go out for drinks, kind of thing, where when it's that size, like you can't leave it up to that or someone's going to get left out. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's like I said, it's just uncharted territory. It's all new to me, and it makes it fun and interesting.
Right on. Last question on that front, just in terms of advice for someone that might be considering this, are there specific roles where you think it makes more sense to do this type of international hiring, places where you see people consistently trip up, developers, designers, editors, writers, like what's fair game?
Yeah. To be fair, a lot of these hires are, what I think in the US we'd call junior or kind of mid-level. They're not senior developers, senior, of any role. So I wouldn't recommend people go out and try to hire, a COO or a VP of finance via us. I build out a bookkeeping team, not a VP of finance or your CFO or anything from us. Roles where it works really well. The anything customer support is awesome. Can get just amazing staff, really well spoken English, well written English. Creative on the kind of graphic and video and podcast side of things. There's a lot of really great people that we're able to source for our clients. Development and design, like specifically, app design, UI, UX, that kind of stuff. That's hard to source anywhere in the world right now, so like it's hard for us as well. We definitely do it, but it's a harder project for us. Same with development, possible, but definitely harder. So operations, support, creative, with the asterisk specifically in like graphic and video and audio, creative, and then just like general operations, like that was kind of our first hire over there, was just helping move and coordinate shipments and inventory and keeping an eye on make sure orders don't fall through the cracks. Those kind of roles are really well suited for us.
Gotcha. So that kind of leads me to a larger conversation that, as I'm going through this, I'm just thinking about different types of labor competing in different markets. So let's talk about some of the ones you referenced: customer service, ops, these creative roles. I think about, whether it's a younger version of myself coming out of school or just all the young people, regardless of their education, trying to break in, usually at an entry level role, which is something similar to these junior roles that you're talking about, and finding themselves not only competing in their local geography with other folks with similar educational backgrounds, but also now an easier than ever experience at competing at a global level. So
yeah,
that's a very broad kind of prompt to bat across the net to you. But, what are your thoughts generally about, young people that maybe just from the geography that they happen to be living in have economic realities where they cannot compete with talent that's in a completely different economy and geographic region?
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, right. Obviously, right off the bat, like, let's not sugarcoat it. You are competing now with someone who's willing and hungry to work, what would be $40,000 to $60,000 position in the US for much less, like 70, 80% less. But the flip side of that is, because we're in this global economy now, you're open for yourself opportunities around the world. It's not just your backyard and your local city of companies that are willing to hire you. So I think that's, let's not focus on just the negative with it, but it also positive of, like, you admire that company that is in San Francisco and you live in Boise, Idaho. Like, you don't necessarily have to move out, to San Francisco to potentially get a role in that company. And I think that's really awesome, like super powerful. That's the most exciting thing about this whole remote work thing, is just like the world is open to everyone and it kind of flattens everything there. So yeah, I mean, I don't think people should be discouraged by the existence, if you're a recent college grad or something, by what we're doing. I would look at it as, hey, like, there's a lot of opportunity out there for me. What I would recommend is like a, college grad in the US or whatever that is competing against, talented, hungry, smart people overseas is, go shadow, a lot of different companies that you admire. Like, I think there's ways. I, don't want everyone to have to work a free internship, but just like volunteer a little bit outside of, your day job somewhere. I think being a generalist today is really, really powerful. So many people go through college or whatever, and you're trained for, one thing. And I think there's nothing wrong with that, but what is needed is someone who understands a little bit about a lot of different stuff in a lot of companies. If you're in project management, you need to know a little bit about development, a little bit about UX, a little bit about design, a little bit about, just psychology and people. And so the more you can expose yourself to a lot of stuff like that, I think in 2021, like, it's better to be a generalist than a specialist that goes super deep in one thing. At least that's my opinion. And that's what's worked for me, right? Like, I'm not a designer. I'm not a programmer. I'm not like a hardcore sales guy. I just know a little bit and enough about each of those, kind of got to that like 80% with a few of them. And I think that's what makes you dangerous and really valuable to another company. So yeah, those are my thoughts.
Yeah, I think the specialty skill set, if it's not really deep, is a huge risk because it's a commodity and someone's going to go find a cheaper marketplace to go buy it. So I agree with either the well-rounded, little bit of everything model, or like go be the frickin' best. And
go
like
be
just
top
1%.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, for sure.
And in any form, anything we're talking about here involves some form of free work, because if you're going to go be the absolute best at it, you're spending your off hours developing the skills and the traits and deepening that expertise. You referenced, internships or working for free for someone. The other form of that is making yourself really legible to those markets outside of your close proximity. So from my perspective, you've done that very much with writing and putting your thoughts out on the internet in an itemized, easily digestible way that says, okay, if I needed to, hire a consultant to help launch my e-com brand, not that you're necessarily offering that explicitly, but like I would at least kick the tires on having a conversation with you, or, ask you to point me in the right direction, because it's very clear that you've documented the successes that you had, you've outlined your perspective on how to go do that thing, and it makes you really legible to someone who's never met you before, hence my ability to kind of do my research before an interview like this. That's the other part, where that could be free work, but it's building your brand and your reputation and making yourself legible.
Yeah, no, totally. I agree. I think, media is super powerful, whether it's starting a podcast, blogging. I mean, today, I think I've seen so many people blow up in the last year just on Twitter, in like business circles. I think the way you found us, like Nick Huber, he's a self-storage acquirer. He's a real estate guy, and blew up with 100,000 Twitter followers over like 1 to 2 years on Twitter by just sharing and documenting his thought process around deals and all of that. And so, if you're just getting started, okay, I'm not an investor or whatever, but like you have opinions and thoughts on how you approach different things. I think being transparent with that, whether Twitter, whether a podcast, whether it's YouTube, is super powerful. Really interesting things happen when you share your work with the world. Like I've met so many cool people doing that, just kind of documenting, being transparent, putting little projects on the internet, and you meet some really cool people that way.
Right on. Last question, then we'll kind of aim towards wrapping up, asking the kind of standard stuff. But so by most conventional measures, you've had a ton of professional success. And if you're going to live, a long life, it's relatively early in the kind of professional career trajectory. I know that you spent some time at MetaLab. So Andrew Wilkinson has also kind of done this collection of companies model, put GMs in place and figure out ways to scale that way. Who else are you? I always think about it as comparing yourself to, because I'm a big, believer in like mimetic theory, Rene Girard, all that kind of thinking on this stuff. But who are you modeling as you build out this portfolio of multiple companies with Need One?
Yeah. I honestly, I don't have another person as an example outside of Andrew that, he's a friend of mine. I worked under him, and he's been an investor in some of our stuff. And really, I've seen close up, like, his life and lifestyle matches what he puts out there. Like it lines up. He has a pretty well-balanced life and is a good dad. Like that's kind of the model, the closest that I mirror us off of. And, props to him for pioneering that. I mean, I think he was heavily inspired by Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger. And we're doing that at a tiny scale compared to what they are. I mean, they're like $1 billion organization, I think, at this point. And so it looks a bit different at our scale, and I've kind of had to navigate that. But yeah, I mean, for those that don't know, we're talking about this guy that runs a holding company called Tiny. It's just tinycapital.com. Andrew and his partner, Chris Sparling, they're like a Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett little duo of the internet, and they buy companies and have this small office of a few people, and the rest are these separate entities run by a CEO, and they're totally separate. There's no like synergies. It's not like this massive company with a core team. Really inspiring. And so his time is pretty freed up to, what's the next thing. He's not operating in those businesses, and so that's that's kind of the dream, is to plug people in once it's these companies get to a good scale, and have them run by smart people and motivate them with, salary, share profits, equity, whatever is important to them, and be freed to start the next thing, or invest in the next thing, or buy the next thing. So that's kind of the model that I aspire to follow.
Gotcha. So yeah, I don't see many folks. I mean, that's why after having such a great experience with Shepherd, digging a little bit deeper, that's why I want to reach out to you, because it is even further behind you in terms of kind of aspiring in that direction. But the concept of finding competent people, putting your trust in them, creating, great economic outcomes for them in addition to yourself, and kind of living in a state of perpetual, I see it as a state of perpetual creativity, because your ability to think up the next idea, go execute on it, the freedom to have that creativity in this form of business building is one that I just have a huge appetite for. So it's cool to find other like-minded folks.
Awesome. Yeah, for sure.
And cool, good dads.
Yeah. It's, to me, it's, you see, early on, I looked up to guys like, Steve Jobs and Zuckerberg and everything. And then you read Steve Jobs' biography and you realize, like, man, like, this guy did a lot of really cool stuff and built some amazing products and, of course, amazing business. But, like, his personal life, he was not great. Like, and same with Elon Musk. Like, the dude's a workaholic, has been through a ton of divorces, I mean, I don't know, I'm not friends with any of those guys, but, like, outside looking in, it looks like they're kind of miserable. I mean, if you ask me, there's not a lot of time for anything but this, like, core mission. And, if that's what they feel like is their calling, that's great. I'm not here to say that's a bad thing, but it's not for me. And I want to be able to be a well-rounded person and not be all consumed by, running my business. I want to, have a life outside of that, whether it's family, hobbies, all the above.
Amen to that. What a beautiful note to wrap up on. If you want to add another person to that list, if you're ever doing that rant again, Jack Welch from GE, same thing, number of divorces, and his calling card was that he has literally fired like tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people, like put them out of work. So that's, not necessarily the aspiration, despite that kind of deity status in the business world. But right. Maybe that's just a rant for another day. Marshall, this has been fantastic. Where can we send people if they want to learn more about you, Need Want, all the stuff you're up to?
Yeah, Need Want is just needwant.com, just spelled like need and want. I'm probably hanging out on Twitter the most. So I'm just at Marshall with one L on Twitter. My real name is spelled with two, but hey, I could get that one, so I went with one L. And then my personal website, that's where I put any articles I write. It's just my full name, marshallhaas.com.
Beautiful. We're going to link that in the show notes, goingdeepwithaaron.com/podcast for every episode, or in the app where you're probably listening to this right now. But Marshall, before I let you go, I'd like to give you the mic one final time to issue an actionable personal challenge to the audience.
Yeah. Thinking about the Shepherd side of things, one thing that kind of led me there is always thinking about, what can either be eliminated from my business or my life or delegated. I think, everyone, myself included, does a ton of stuff that just doesn't matter, in like delivering whatever you're trying to do. A lot of what businesses do, like, just isn't useful and can be you can literally stop doing a lot of different things. And the stuff that's left, at least, for people trying to scale up, look at, in small ways, what you could delegate. I think that's kind of literally the only path to scaling up anything is automating or delegating or eliminating things. So kind of always having that lens as you operate in your career and business, I think is helpful to, it's like a muscle, right? To kind of flex that and always be looking at that in what you're doing.
And I think that's, it does require kind of sharp sharpening the mind that way, because otherwise you can get just kind of transfixed on, well, this part of my day sucks, or this thing sucks, and it kind of permeates other elements of it. But, if you can find the ways to actually cut it out. And once you do it a couple of times, you're like, oh, snap, I'm going to do this all sorts of stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. No, well said.
Right on. Well, we just went deep with Marshall Haas. Hope everyone out there has a fantastic day.
Hey, thanks for watching to the end. If you enjoyed this conversation, I am certain that you would also enjoy our conversation with Andrew Gazdecki. He has a similar framework focused on the acquisition of small companies and how it can be life-changing professionally and financially. Check it out.